had no stick. The emphasis was on skating, passing, and use of the feet as well as the stick in moving the ball forward. The Russians played the game in Scandinavia in the initial years of the 20th century, but it never became an Olympic sport, which hindered its development internationally. Canadian ice hockey was introduced into the Soviet Union in the 1930s by visiting Canadians, but the first organized game in the USSR would have to wait to be played until 1946, in the recovery period after the Second World War. When the Soviet Union first entered international play at the World Championships in Stockholm, Sweden, in 1954, it did so with a bang, immediately displacing Canada and winning the gold medal. This intersection of hockey and history, hockey and diplomacy, is the subject of this book, as well as the personal story of a young Canadian diplomat and his wife on their first assignment, who found themselves in Cold War Moscow, landing in the middle of a historic sporting event between the best hockey players of both countries. To help navigate the road, a few cursory passages, however inadequate, might be in order about the history and interaction of our two protagonists, Russia and Canada. Russia is the only country which makes Canada appear small. It is almost twice as wide as Canada, with a landmass 1.7 times larger, encompassing 11 time zones, compared to 6 in Canada. Russia's estimated population in 1970, at 130 million, was over 6 times greater than Canada's at that time, and if one counted the USSR as a whole, then there were 10 Soviet citizens for every Canadian. If Canada is said by some historians to suffer from too much geography and not enough history, then Russia suffers from too much of both. Russian history is long, tumultuous, and bloody, featuring multiple foreign invasions over the centuries from the east, south, west, and north. The Mughal descendants of Genghis Khan, Tamerlane, the Teutonic Knights, the Turks, the Swedes, the Poles, the Grand French Army under Napoleon, the German army led by Kaiser Wilhelm II in the First World War, and then the Germans again in a more vicious and destructive assault under Adolf Hitler in the Second World War. Russia and the Soviet Union, of course, were not always on the receiving end of death and mayhem. Both state incarnations were expansionist powers in their own right. The Finns, Poles, Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Ukrainians, and peoples in other parts of Eastern Europe, the Caucasus, and Central Asia knew this only too well, as did those further afield. There were homegrown purges, pogroms, starvation policies associated with agricultural collectivization, a mass of wealth and privilege at the top, and little to nothing at the bottom. Political repression of one kind or another, aided by various secret police agencies, has been passed down through the ages from the Tsars to the Communists and beyond. Evocative names like Ivan the Terrible, Peter the Great, and Catherine the Great are sprinkled throughout their history, with periods of darkness and of light. The Russian people, perhaps quite naturally given the circumstances, are ever suspicious of both foreigners and of each other. Russia is a patient and long-suffering nation. At the same time, Russians will often describe themselves in terms of exceptionalism, a people neither from the East nor the West, using the same self-proclaimed language as Americans. There is much talk of the distinctive Russian soul, plus references to the Third Rome, the doctrine dating from the 15th and 16th centuries that Russia and Moscow replaced Rome and Byzantium Rome, Constantinople, as the ultimate center of true Christianity and of the Roman Empire. They are a patriotic people, as Stalin found during the darkest days of the Second World War, when he appealed to them to rise up, not to save communism, but to protect Mother Russia. Winston Churchill famously defined Russia in a 1939 BBC broadcast as a riddle wrapped in a mystery.